Each morning, he saw a homeless girl on his way to work. Determined to help, he started bringing her food daily. As they got to know each other, he was stunned when he discovered her true identity. Warren lived in a big city but could walk to work because his office was close to his apartment. One day, he saw a homeless girl sitting against a wall. She seemed friendly, but everyone ignored her. Warren wanted to help but had no money. He felt awful as he walked past her. The next day, he decided to do something. He made an extra breakfast and gave it to the girl. She was surprised but very grateful and thanked him. Warren felt good about helping and decided to bring her breakfast every day. From then on, he prepared 2 breakfasts each morning, and the girl always appreciated his kindness. Eventually, Warren sat beside her and the two started talking. This slowly grew their bond, resulting in them frequently eating their breakfast together. This ritual continued for about 2 months. Warren brought food for Alice, as the homeless girl was called. At first, it was mainly Warren who talked, but little by little, Alice opened up more and the two really bonded. Warren thought everything was fine until one day he reached Alice's usual spot and saw nothing there. He frowned and walked faster, hoping she had just moved or was hidden behind something. But when he got there, Alice was nowhere to be found. He waited for a while as he usually did, but eventually had to leave for work. He left the food container on the ground, feeling a bit disappointed. The next day, and for the rest of the week, Alice still didn't return. Warren was sad, thinking she had left without saying goodbye. But their story wasn't over yet. When Warren started his next work week, he was surprised to see Alice back at her spot. He hadn't expected to see her again, assuming she had found a new place to stay. He quickly approached her, even though he didn't have food with him. He was curious about what had happened over the past week. "I'm sorry I didn't bring food today," he said as he reached her. He pulled out an apple he had for himself and sat down, but something felt off. Alice didn't greet him and seemed to move away slightly when he sat next to her. She wasn't responding to his questions as usual, almost as if she didn't recognize him. Warren wondered why she was acting so differently. Was it only about the food for her? He felt hurt and confused. He quickly left to get some breakfast for her and returned, only for Alice to yell at him, "Go away. Don't come to me anymore." Warren was shocked and stood up quickly. He was glad she remembered him, but didn't understand why she was acting this way. He had only tried to help her and thought she appreciated his support. What had changed? Warren realized he had actually missed their breakfast ritual over the last week. Together with her sudden behavior change, that was enough for him not to give in so easily. "What do you mean? What's going on?" he asked, but Alice insisted that he leave her alone. The situation was slowly escalating, and people started to stare at him as the homeless girl was yelling at him to leave her alone. Realizing this was getting out of hand, he frustratingly put down the container he got for her and walked away. What had gotten into her? Did something happen last week? Warren arrived at work a little later than usual and threw his bag on his desk. He tried his best to continue his day normally, but his mind kept drifting off to Alice and her strange behavior. Something didn't seem right, and he wanted to know what was going on. On his way home, Warren saw Alice again and tried to get her attention, but she ignored him and looked away. Smiling to himself, Warren felt he had a plan to change her mind. He decided to show her kindness until she couldn't ignore him and would trust him again. He noticed her sleeping bag was getting worse and the weather was getting colder, so that night he went back with a new sleeping bag and hot food. He thought this might help him understand why she was acting differently. Alice took the sleeping bag and food but still ignored him, until she finally spoke. "Why do you keep coming back?" she asked, sounding a bit curious. Warren told her he was worried about her and wanted to understand her strange behavior. When he mentioned her change in attitude, Alice flinched and looked away, making Warren even more concerned. "What's going on? Did something happen last week? You can trust me. Please talk to me like you used to," he said gently. Alice started crying and Warren didn't know what to do or what he had done wrong. "The last person who said that to me couldn't be trusted," she sobbed, which made Warren even more worried. He was confused and troubled by her response. "What do you mean? What happened? Is that why you weren't here last week?" he asked. Alice nodded through her tears. "Please tell me. I want to help," Warren said kindly. Alice looked at him, wiped her tears, and took deep breaths before explaining that someone had approached her last week, claiming they could help her with her past, but they had lied and mistreated her. Warren was alarmed when he heard her say that. "Mistreated? Are you okay?" he asked instantly. But he was also confused and his mind kept filling with questions, so he couldn't help but blurt out more questions before Alice could answer. How could he help you with your past? What happened? Alice began by saying she was fine, but he had promised to take care of her and lied about it. It had been a hard week because of it, and she was very disappointed that he was also lying about her past. "I really hope to get out of this situation," she sighed. With every answer Alice gave, more questions arose in Warren's mind, so he tried his best to get the facts straight. "What is your situation? What happened in your past? Why could the man help you? What's going on exactly?" he asked her. But he wasn't ready for her response. "I don't know, and that's the problem," Alice said, explaining that she didn't remember much of her life. When she tried hard, she could remember snippets, but everything was blank from a certain age. "I've been looking for answers for a long time," she said. Warren was in disbelief and shocked to hear this. "I'm so sorry," Warren eventually said when he recovered from the surprise. Alice shrugged and said she was used to it by now, but she was still looking for answers. "The most prominent things I can remember are an accident, a hospital, and waking up in an unknown house with unknown people," Alice added. Warren listened speechlessly as Alice told her life story. She explained it was too overwhelming for her. Everything was unknown. "So I ran away to find something I knew. I searched for days and found nothing. Eventually, I settled here in this unfamiliar city," Alice said, tears forming in her eyes again. Alice looked down and held her hands before her face. Warren felt powerless and astonished. "You don't remember anything else?" he asked in disbelief. Alice shook her head. Again, he felt incredibly bad for the girl and wanted to help her. "Have you gone to the police?" he asked her. Alice looked up again after he asked the question, and he could see a regretful expression on her face. She explained she had tried to go to the police multiple times, but as Warren might have noticed, she wasn't very socially skilled and didn't trust people, so she turned away at the last moment. The words had just left her mouth when Warren abruptly got up. "Then I will help you," he exclaimed. He offered his hand to help her get up. "Together, we will get you out of this predicament," he said determinedly. Alice looked at him hesitantly, but eventually she grabbed his hand and stood up. Alice accepted Warren's help, but she remained hesitant. Even though the previous man had lied about knowing something about her past, Warren didn't know anything, so how could he help her? But he convinced her to go to the nearest police station and get their help. The duo immediately caught the attention of multiple police officers as Warren wore nice clothes and Alice was obviously a homeless person. But Warren ignored the stares and guided Alice toward the front desk, where they tried to explain the situation as best they could. They were instructed to wait, so they did. Anxiously, Warren's leg nervously twitched as the minutes passed until finally an officer approached them. He asked them to follow and guided Warren and Alice to a room. Once everyone sat down, he told the duo he would help them get to the bottom of this. Warren looked at Alice. "It will be all right," he said. Warren could see Alice was nervous and tried his best to support her. The officer had tasked the homeless girl with telling them as much as she could remember from her life. "Everything you can think of, no matter how small," the officer said. "That info will be the starting point of our investigation." It was hard work, and Warren noticed it took a heavy toll on Alice, but she persisted until the officer was satisfied. After the interview, Warren and Alice remained at the station the entire night, helping the police if needed. Eventually, early in the morning, the officer approached them with good news. "I found something," the officer said as he held up a document. He explained that he had searched through the files of missing persons the entire night and found one that matched Alice's story. "There was an accident with a girl who recovered at home and then ran away," he said. But that wasn't all. The officer said it was a cold case from 10 years ago. Warren was stunned and looked at Alice. Had she really been missing for a decade? Had she been searching for answers all this time? Seeing her joyful face, Warren felt a deep happiness for her. The officer took them back to discuss the case. If this was really Alice, she came from a city 8 hours away, and the case had gone cold because they hadn't searched this area. To confirm if the case was about Alice, they needed a DNA test. Alice agreed right away. The police contacted her parents, and Alice went to the hospital with Warren. They took a salivary sample from Alice and did a checkup. Her parents were kept apart until the test results came in. When the DNA matched, Warren saw a very emotional reunion between Alice and her parents after 10 years. The parents were incredibly grateful to Warren, but he was just happy everything had turned out well. Alice returned to her childhood home, where she and Warren stayed in touch. He became a close friend of the family and visited them often.